Yeah, I know, right? That's it. Wait, what? No, we're not on. We're not on. If we were on, the. Oh, hey there, YouTube. How are you today? Hey, you're here with Captain Mac, and we are going to be starting a new series, what I hope will be a really long series on virtual airlines. And I've flown with a bunch of different virtual airlines, and I got to tell you, this one here, Phoenix Virtual Airways, love these guys. So we're going to start a new career with them, and we're going to try and work our way up through the ranks and get to where we can fly something like this guy right here. So, without further ado, let's take a look at what we got going on here. First of all, just like any virtual airline, you want to go to their website and click register or sign up for an account, whatever the option may be. It's usually pretty easy. Currently, here at Phoenix Virtual Airways, or just PVA, what they do is you sign up for an account or you register for an account, and they'll shoot you an email and let you know that one of the administrators is going to take a look at that and verify your information. Eventually, it's supposed to be an automated system, but we'll get more into that later. And you don't want me to spend a whole lot of time sitting here yapping about PVA and the website and all that, because we're going to cover a lot of that stuff as we go along. What we really want to do, we want to fly. So, we've started out, we're a probationary first officer. That means we just got our pilot's license, our airline transport pilot's license, if you will. We are brand new, and we are going to be limited in the aircraft we can fly until we get to the next rank. A lot of good information on here. It tells us when our last flight was, how many flights we have, total hours, and so on. But most importantly for us, we're going to be looking at this guy right here, how many hours we have until our next rank. And as you can see right here, we've got 20. So we need 20 hours of flight time before we're going to be able to fly the next level of aircraft. And as we go along, we'll get more into that, and we'll show you the different aircraft. There's all kinds of stuff on this website. They're fantastic. As you can see here, I've already picked up my next 10 flights. Now, one of the nice or neat things about PVA is there's actually 700 different airlines that you can fly. So rather than flying for, let's just say, one of the United virtual airlines, and there's several of them, and you only fly United flights, here at PVA, you get to fly from any airline that's out there just about. In fact, I don't think there's very many airlines they don't have on here. So we've actually got our first 10 flights all set up, and they're going to be, the first few will be here with GLA's Great Lakes Airlines, and then Ameriflight will be the next several after that. As you can see from our logbook, there's no flights in there. We don't have any of our last 10 flights, and all this other stuff. There's some great information here. We're going to go over all this at a later date. Right now, what I want to do is I want to jump into this first flight and get rolling. So, let's take a look here. You can click on the flight number, and this is going to take us over, and this gives us our flight briefing. Okay, as you can see, it's Great Lakes Airlines, flight number 7151. And we're going to fly from KPHX, which is Phoenix, and we're going to fly up to KSOW, which is Show Low. Both of those obviously are in Arizona. We know Phoenix is. Show Low's up in northern Arizona. It's not a very long flight. 45 minutes or so. I'm not going to do the math here in my head real quick. It's about 49 minutes, I think. 46 maybe. We're going to be flying a Beech 1900D. And our total distance is about 112 miles, 111.8, 112 miles. We can get some weather information out of here and stuff like that. Now, I don't know about you. I like to use Active Sky. Fantastic program. Gives me much better weather information than I'm going to get here. But these are here if you want to take a look at them. And they're updated, usually relatively current. You can see this one here is 3 May of this year at 0303 EDT, which is 1903 Zulu time, or GMT, which is Greenwich Mean Time. They're the same thing. You can also get previous routes if you want to have them dispatch the route for you, and you can pull up charts here. You can also go straight to AirNav. That's where these link to. We're not going to do any of that right now. Again, our goal today is to get to this flight because we want to get those 20 hours knocked out and start flying in the bigger, faster stuff. Otherwise, we're never going to get to this MD-11 up here, which, by the way, gorgeous picture. So, let's go ahead and break away from here, and we're going to head on over to the aircraft, and we're going to start setting up this flight, and I'll bump my gums a little more when I get over there about what we actually got going on and what I use. All right, so our first flight together, and I lied to you a little bit. Not intentionally, but we're not jumping in the aircraft quite yet. Now, just so you know, this is like take 30 on this little section because I want to highlight the ACARS without going too far in depth. I'm going to do an ACARS tutorial video. You can look for that down in the video list below, and that's going to explain how everything works with ACARS. However, I do want to cover a couple things really briefly before we jump into our aircraft and take off. First and foremost, ACARS is a flight tracking system, at least for virtual airlines. ACARS is used in the real world with I can't talk. It's used by real world airlines for communication between the aircraft and the aircraft crew and the airline on the ground. For our purposes, ACARS gathers all the information about our flight before, during, and after, and creates the pilot report, or the PIREP, and submits it to PVA for approval. Now, the approval process is automated in almost all circumstances, and we'll talk later about when it's not automated. You can see that, look for that in the tutorial video. For our purposes here today, we just want to focus on two things real quick. First of all, when we click on Get Bid, which it's already grayed out now, it's going to give us the next flight in our list. Okay, and that was the first flight we had on there, which was Great Lakes Airlines Flight 7151. You can see it's 46 minutes. I was pretty close on my guess there. The distance, the price, the aircraft, departure airport, arrival airport, and more. The main thing we want to concern ourselves with here is that the flight we're about to take departs from our current location. Now you can see that our cruise center is LAX, but our current location has nothing listed. That's because we don't have any flights yet, and PVA has this fantastic little feature where your first flight, once you sign up and you create your profile, your first flight can be from wherever in the world you want. Doesn't matter where. Now, we're going to be flying out of Phoenix. Why, you ask? Because I live in Phoenix. So why not fly out of Phoenix? Okay, but we can start wherever we want. What's important is after this flight is completed, our location will show KSOW. If our next flight doesn't depart from KSOW, let's just say our second flight in our list departed from Phoenix again. Well, what would happen here at PVA, and this is a feature I actually like about PVA, you're going to be charged a jump seat for that flight. My location is Sholo, but I departed on my next flight out of Phoenix. I need to be charged for that, a jump seat. But they don't charge you in your virtual dollars here. They're going to charge you in your flight hours. So whatever the charge is, or whatever the flight is from Sholo back to Phoenix, I'm going to be charged that in hours. Why is that important to us? Well, remember, we got 20 hours to go before we can become a first officer, and we want to get there as quickly as we can, so we certainly don't want to be losing any of our hours along the way. So we want to make sure that the flight we're about to depart on departs from our current location. And again, this first flight can be from anywhere in the world. We're departing from Phoenix, but you'll see on our next flight when we pop up ACARS that our location is going to say KSOW. And that's where we're going to want to depart from on our next flight. Otherwise, we're going to be charged that jump seat, and we don't want that to happen. All right, so we've set up all the information in here. Again, take a look at the tutorial video down below on how to use ACARS, and I'll show you what all these awesome functions are, and I'll explain it in depth. But you don't want me to sit here for 20 minutes running my suck about ACARS when what you really want to do is get into the airplane like I do. So let's get to that right now. All right. Welcome aboard Flight 7151. This is our Coronado Beach 1900, and as you can see, we're in a cold and dark situation here. Now, Coronado, at least the Beach 1900's got a few weird little quirks about starting it up. For example, if I hop over here, let me just change this view so that I can move the yoke out of your way here. If I flip on the main battery switch, it's gonna start the engines. Now, I've got my engine auto ignition off. My engine ignitions are off down here, but for whatever reason, when I flip on the battery, it tries to start the engines. I don't know if that's just a little quirk with my particular Coronado 1900, or if that's a problem that everybody has. If you know a solution to that, or you know what might be causing it, please go ahead and leave something down in the comments, and hopefully I'll be able to fix that problem. In the interim, though, it doesn't really matter. Most of the pre-flight stuff is pretty straightforward in this aircraft, and we're not going to worry too much about it right now. There's a few things excuse me, there's a few things we want to worry about with this aircraft once we've got the engine started up. Now, as far as the engine startup procedure goes, well, if I can talk and breathe here, as far as the engine startup procedure goes, it's not all that difficult, but it is definitely something that that you want to go over the checklist with. Now, you can use the Control E function to just auto start this aircraft, but probably the key things that you need to worry about when you're doing an actual manual start is once you've fired up that right ignition engine start switch, the right condition lever has to be moved to low idle after the N1 accelerates through 12%. Okay, once that N1 accelerates through 12%, and that's going to be this guy right over here, actually this one here for the right engine, you got to make sure that you hop over here and you move that fuel condition lever here up into the low idle position, otherwise the engine doesn't want to fire. And then you do the same thing again. Well, once that engine's up and running, you move it to high idle, then you go through the process for the left engine, and when you move the condition lever, the fuel condition lever for the left engine to low idle, you never move it to high idle. You'll end up just bringing engine 1 back down to low idle. It's kind of a weird, quirky little thing. The 1900 isn't the only aircraft that does that. I have a beautiful rendition of the King Air, Beech King Air 200 from, I believe it's Flight 1 Simulations, and the startup procedure is almost identical. So it must be a Beechcraft thing. Again, anybody who's in the know, please put in the comments down below if you know something about it. For myself, I am a real-world pilot, in case anybody's wondering. However, I have a private pilot's license. It means I fly the little Cessna aircraft. I'm not allowed to fly in bad weather yet because I don't have my instrument rating. I am working towards that, but some of the stuff that we cover on here I know to be proper real-world procedures, and other things, if I can't gather the information somewhere, garner or gather the information from somewhere, well, then I'll just ask you what your thoughts are, because there's a wealth of knowledge out there, and I'm always interested in learning new things. And I'm still having a hard time talking and breathing for some reason. So let's go ahead and get started up here. In case anybody's wondering, I'm using the Easy Dock camera system. I just got it recently. Love it. It's fantastic. It was a bit of a pain to set up, but once I have it set up and running, I can hop around to the views that I need when I need to, fuel, whatever, and we're good to go. Now, I've already changed the fuel quantity on the aircraft. We do not need a full load of fuel. The more fuel we carry, the more weight we have, which means we burn more fuel. We want to burn less fuel because we're working towards profit here. We want to make money for the airline, and the only way we're going to make money is by having a lower overhead. That means burning less fuel. So we only carry the amount of fuel that we need. Now, I didn't go into lengthy calculations. I used PFPX to plan my flight, and I'll show you all of that stuff in a later video. This first video really is about getting into this aircraft and getting going. Now, you'll remember that we said our flight level is going to be I'm sorry, it's not a flight level, it's just 17,000 feet. And you know, when I said that, I said we're flying east. Okay, we're not really flying east, we're flying north by northeast. In other words, the way it works in the real world, anything from 360 degrees all the way around to the right down to 179 degrees is basically, for altitude purposes, considered east. So when you're flying instrument flight, you're going to fly at an odd 1,000, and if you're flying VFR, that's visual flight rules, you're going to fly at an odd 1,000 plus 500. So if we were flying VFR on this flight, we would fly at 17,500. And obviously the opposite of that is if you're on the other side of the compass, you're flying at an even 1,000 or an even 1,000 plus 500. I always found it a little weird when I did my pilot's training. They said the little ditty to remember it is, what was it? East is odd, but west is even odder. Yeah, that was the way they did it. Now, why somebody didn't just say east should be even and west should be odd, because that'd be easy to remember. East is even, that means west is odd. Nobody did that. So east is actually flying at odd altitudes, and west is flying at even altitudes. So if we were flying on the west side of the compass, we would be flying at 16 or 18,000. All right, enough about that. let's go ahead and get this aircraft started up here. And again, we're just going to flip on the auto switches here, and once we turn on the battery, this thing's going to be ready to fire up. We still have to make sure we move that condition lever, and there's a bunch of other pre-flight stuff that goes into this thing. But as I was poking around it, really getting to know the aircraft, a lot of those pre-flight things aren't actually simulated, like testing your IFAS auxiliary power. It's not simulated. Just some weird things. And then the little quirk with the battery, when I switch it on, it tries to start the engines automatically. So if it's trying to start the engines, I'm not actually checking electrical systems, it's starting the engines, and that's kind of a pain. So we're going to go ahead and just flip on the battery, and you can hear it right there, it's already firing up. So let's hop over here. And now we can look at our percentage, but I mean, it's going to get there pretty quick. And it looks like it's trying to fire both up at the same time. That's because I put both the auto switches on. Probably not the best way to start the aircraft. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn off the left engine, and let's see if that yeah, see, we're at 12% now. So we'll move that condition lever up to low idle. And there it goes, engine's firing up. Okay, and once we get stabilized here, we're going to bring that condition lever up to high idle. So once we get to 50% N1 or above, which we're already at, we want to go ahead and move that condition lever up to high idle. So there it is, up in high idle. And because I have the ignition on for the left engine, we're going to go ahead and just fire that right up. And as you can see, it's already at 12%, but it's not doing anything because I haven't moved this to low idle yet. There we are in low idle. And we should see the left engine spinning up. There she goes. And we don't need to move that condition lever up to high idle. Instead, what ends up happening is we bring the right condition lever back down to low idle. There she is. And then we'll just adjust our handles over here. I have a TQ6 throttle quadrant that I'm using. Fantastic piece of equipment. And so I've got my levers adjusted. Everything's up and running. Now, for all ground operations, you're supposed to have the engine anti-ice on. That puts a little block in there to prevent the debris from getting up into the engine and damaging it. So we don't need the ignition switches on anymore. We don't need the auto switches on anymore because our engines are running now. We do need our oxygen on. That's the passenger oxygen and the captain's oxygen. Okay. And let's just take a look at our panel right here. So we got our left and right DC and our auto feather are all warnings right now. And here's the bus switches for left and right DC. And let's take a look. Oh, they're still did I hit the wrong switches? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the AC bus. The left and right generator is what we need to turn on there. So we got the left and right generator on. You can see that goes off. And then the auto throttle is going to have to be turned on before we take off. So we're just doing a real wicked quick startup here, not a full in-depth job. Hopefully, you know, I know some of you are real purists, and I try to be, but sometimes I just want to get in the plane and fly. You know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to do right now. We're really just trying to get in the airplane and fly. We're making sure we're doing things right, but maybe not necessarily everything by the book. The Coronado aircraft, in my own little defense here, it's a quirky little airplane, and it's got some weird steps. And when we do some future flights, I'm going to do a full proper startup. But we had so much time with the introduction and talking about ACARS already that if I did a full startup right now, we're going to be here all day, and you don't want to be here all day. So we may have a warning on our ACARS because we didn't make sure that our collision lights were on here. You can see this anti-collision, which is supposed to also be the beacon, wasn't on already. So we want to set that to ground, and we'll go ahead and we'll just flip on our other lights right now, except for our landing lights. We don't need those yet. We don't need any panel lights. It's a daytime flight. There is a process during the after start where you want to check the voltage on each of these on your center bus, your left and right generators. I don't know what the TPL stands for on the bus, and then of course the battery. And there's a level that each of them should be at, is in regards to how many volts they're putting out. And so we just want to check and make sure those are right. It's supposed to be between 27.9 And let me just look at my book here real quick. 27.5 and 29 volts for the left and right generators, and it's supposed to be 26 to 28 volts for the TPL bus. So if we just click this again, that's our TPL bus. It looks like maybe it's just a shade low, but there's nothing I can really do about it. It doesn't give me a procedure for it. So you cycle the generators a couple times if you still have lights illuminated down here. Okay, we don't have any lights illuminated down there, at least nothing bad. Everything that's illuminated down there is as it should be, which is the anti-ice, and we want the anti-ice to be on. Now we do need to turn our avionics on. Our avionics switch is right here. Flip that on, and as you can see, all our instruments are coming on now. Going through our IFAS, that's this guy right here, is going through its checks, and then it'll be ready to roll here in a minute. The anti-ice, of course, stays on. We've got our transponder here. We're going to leave it on the VFR code. 1200 is the VFR code. We're not flying with ATC. Now, here's why I'm not flying with ATC before anybody goes to beat me up on this. FSX default ATC sucks. It's horrible. It's rotten to the core. I can't stand it. I hate it. It drives me insane. I used to use it, and I'd spend 45 minutes sitting on a taxiway waiting for a truck to come from the other side of the airport to drive in front of me, just to drive into my wheel, because ATC gave them priority. That's not how it really works. In the real world, aircraft always had the priority. Anyway, everybody probably knows by now, default ATC sucks. Now, there are a few good programs out there. Unfortunately, I have a very hard time with those robotic sounding voices. You know, we're Flight 7151, you know, and those better ATC programs will come on there and say, Great Lakes Airlines Flight 7151, right? It's annoying. I can't stand it. I'm used to real ATC controllers, you know, they talk pretty fast, they talk pretty smooth. So if somebody knows of a really good ATC program, please hit me up down in the comments there. I'm done talking about that. Let's go ahead and set our altitude here. We're going to be flying at 17,000 feet. I'm just going to set this sucker right on up there. We're not doing any step climbs or anything like that. And since we're not using ATC, we're not worried about them telling us, hey, you need to fly to 10,000, then 12,000, and so on. So we're going to set that up. Jump on up here just a little bit. This is our Garmin GNS 530. It is not the same Garmin that is in your standard default aircraft. This is a different one. Now, here's a little catch here. We've got an FMC in here, and the FMC has a flight plan in it, in case anybody's wondering. Okay, this is our first page here. We can accept the information, and here's our flight plan. Now, here's the catch. I've got that same flight plan saved as an FSX flight plan, and it's showing up here on the GPS. As soon as you turn this thing on, this is one of those little quirks about Coronado. As soon as you turn this thing on, the aircraft will no longer fly the nav route via the FMS. Okay? That moment of silence was for the stupidity of that very thing right there. Like, seriously, why does it not do that? Okay, so how do you change between nav and GPS? Because we want to fly this route, so we're going to have to fly it via GPS because we turn this on. It's this little button right here. See the VLOC? Okay, that's VOR and localizer, or nav if you will. Switch that, now it says GPS. So when we hit our nav button on our autopilot, it's going to follow the GPS. Now here comes the next little quirk in the Coronado 1900. Here's all the functions you can see right here. Let me turn these up. Here's all the functions for your autopilot: heading, altitude, nav hold switch, altitude select, all the various functions. But there's no adjustment here. There's no adjustment knobs of any sort. Okay, now where do we adjust this at? We can adjust it with this guy right here. This is actually autopilot adjustments, and you can see the autopilot engage, trim up and down, and so on. What a pain in the can. Now, if you're flying in a real Beechcraft, it's not a big deal. I mean, you just reach over to your right here. But we're flying in a little two-dimensional environment trying to simulate a three-dimensional world, and it doesn't work so well. So my only real option when I want to make adjustments to my autopilot is to shrink this little guy down over here, make it look like it's still semi-normal. And now I can make heading adjustments and so on if necessary, and I can always just click right here to turn it off. So that's what I have to do for my autopilot. I know it's kind of lame, deal with it. That's just life. Last thing I'm going to talk about before we get ready to taxi out here. Okay, you'll probably see some chop, and I hope not, but I won't know until I fire up the video, but maybe all of this is not crystal clear. It is on my screen, it may not necessarily be on the window or on the video. Here's the thing, I have a mid-range system, okay? It's not top of the line, greatest system in the world, and when I'm flying these aircraft right now, I'm getting 20 frames per second. But when you record a video while flying these aircraft, your frame rates tend to drop a little bit. Some of you may already know that. So I apologize if it's a little bit choppy in some areas, especially on takeoff and landing. I know it can be a little obnoxious, but I hope it doesn't turn you off from our videos here. Eventually the idea is to get a fantastic system, but we're looking at anywhere from, you know, $1,700 to $2,500 depending on the system I get. So that being said, I thought about turning on the little donation function here on YouTube, and you guys can donate money if you want. If anybody might be interested in throwing $5 my way for something like that, cool, I'm all for it. But I'm not going to sit here and ask you to send me money to get a new computer. Bear with what I got here, please. Just so you know, while I'm flying it on here, it looks fine. There's really no chop. Occasionally my frame rates will drop to about 15 in a busy airport. There's a tiny bit of chop. It's not enough to make flying difficult, but it can be a little bit obnoxious for you on the video. So I hope it's not doing that, and if it is, I apologize. I've already pulled the weather for Phoenix. I told you before I use Active Sky. I use Active Sky 2012, not Active Sky Next. But I did pull our weather. The wind is 220 at 13 knots, gusting to 18 knots. Temperature is 19.2 degrees Celsius, and what we need to know right now is our altimeter, which is 3009. We have 3008, so we need to make an adjustment and bring that up 3009. That makes sure we're at the proper altitude. Last thing we want to do here before we taxi out is we're going to make adjustments to our V speeds here. Okay, so V1, V rotate, V2. Now, I don't need to be at 220 knots to be at V2, but I'm not going to go to all the trouble of calculating V1, V rotate, and V2. I do know with this aircraft and my current load that V1 and V rotate are almost identical, and they're close to, if I can get it, you can see I'm fiddling with this. It's kind of hard to adjust this. Another little quirk here of the 1900. It's close to 140 knots. It's actually a little less, but that's alright. We don't get callouts on this anyway. These are just for our visual benefit. Alright, so hope you like that. Looks great. Let's jump back up top here real quick, and let's make sure our lights are on. Taxi lights basically have all our lights on. Our beacon light is currently set at ground. We'll move it to flight before we take off. Recognition lights, we can turn those on. Floodlights, we don't really need the floodlight because it's daytime, so you're not going to see anything out there, and we don't need any cabin lights. So we're pretty much good to go here. Couple more things we need to do real quick before this flight kicks off. We need to make sure our pressure is set for the cabin altitude. Obviously, cabin altitude is not going to be at minus 1,455 feet. We want our cabin altitude to probably be somewhere around 800 feet. That's what we're going to set it at. Close to 8, as close as it'll let us get to 800 feet. Excuse me, I had a little hiccup there. And then this is the rate at which it changes, and it should be changing pretty much right now. The system should already be on. We'll double check that here in a second. So, and it's not letting me adjust that anyway, so I guess it's pretty much set the way it is, right? So there you have it. And we just need to make sure the system's on. Everything's good to go. Everything, believe it or not, is pretty much where it needs to be. You see I'm not messing with a whole lot of things right now, and that's just because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on helping everybody or walking you through, you know, Carenado's systems here when we could be spending that time flying. We've already spent enough time here, so let's get our pilot on, or pitot heat, depending on how you like to say it. There is a portion where you check to break the ice. Lights came on, we turn it back off. We don't need them, we don't want it on. The alternate static source is supposed to be on. Fuel vents are good where they're at. Stall warning is good once we turn it on there. We don't need windshield or window anti-ice. We are in Phoenix, Arizona. It is warm out. And I think that just about wraps it up here. I think we're pretty much about ready to go, aren't we? I'm just double checking. I always do this. I double check everything. If I'm not 100% positive that we got everything ready to go, I double check it. Always a good idea, right? And I know there's a knob for. Oh, I know where it's at actually. It is. Okay, I lied. I don't know right where it's at. There it is. This is for our temperature, right? So we want to turn it to auto. Auto temp is on. We don't need to do anything with the bleed air or anything like that. We don't need any of that stuff. We can do our warning test here as we get ready to taxi out.
Glide slow.
If you heard the dinging, that wasn't a ship coming in. That was somebody texting me. We're ready to taxi out. We're going to taxi with our flaps up. And because of the wind, we're going to be using either one of the runway 25 or runway 26. We got 25 left and right, runway 26. Now, I could pull up an EFB if I wanted. Okay, you notice the kind of slow loading the texture in there. That's our Great Lakes Airline. Well, easiest way to do this, just hop up here, zoom it down, and look at that. Here's runway 26. It's off to our left. I do have GSX, however, now let's go ahead and use them. So you pop up your GSX window. Oh, it's not going to work because our engines are already running. I forgot about that. But that's all right because where Great Lakes Airlines parks over at Phoenix, I happen to know this because I work at the airport. They actually just make a little U-turn themselves. So we're going to make a U-turn to the right, all the way up and around, and we will be ready to rock and roll. Change to this little view actually lets me pan around using the mouse, but that may get a little choppy. So I'm going to stick with this guy right here. We're going to move our prop lever all the way forward. You see the little message right there, PV ACARS, passenger loading completed. That means as far as ACARS is concerned, our flight has begun. The other message up there was from GSX telling us that we need to, boy, that sucker took off quick, didn't it? Telling us that we need to set the parking brake because it still wants to do things, but we're not going to let it. So let's go ahead and taxi out here. Again, take a quick look. We know that we need to swing all the way around here. Now, yeah, I get it. Technically, you should do it from inside the airplane, but come on, let's just take a quick look and make sure we know where we're going, right? So the runway to our right is 26, so we're going to go all the way down there. Forgive that little view from underneath the airplane. It's kind of annoying. And let's start our taxi out here. Now, we don't want to taxi too fast. The fact of the matter is taxi speed is usually somewhere between 20 and 30 knots for commercial aircraft. The bigger ones are actually allowed to taxi faster, which is kind of funny to me. But we're a small airplane here. We're just cutting across the tarmac there. Get onto our taxiway. We'll hang a left up here. I've actually seen days at Phoenix Sky Harbor where this taxiway we're pulling onto right now and the one just to the left of us have airplanes all the way down this thing waiting for takeoff at certain times of day because it gets that busy. That's just crazy. I would not want to sit in that line. Believe it or not, Phoenix Sky Harbor is the 9th busiest airport in the country. A lot of people don't know that. It's the 9th busiest airport in the United States as far as traffic flow goes. So the number of flights and passengers that come and go on a daily basis, it is the 9th busiest in the country. Little fun fact for you there. Don't count on getting a lot of those. Alright, we are not going to do an intersection departure. They wouldn't allow it anyway, not in the real world. We're trying to stick to at least some real world procedures here. We know that our startup wasn't a real world startup. Wasn't the way it really gets done. I get it. I understand. Don't be offended. We will do proper startups later. I'm still trying to adjust to this airplane a little bit. Like I said, it's got some weird little quirks about it. So I want to get used to those things first and make sure that I'm doing things the right way before I try to show you a full procedure. Otherwise, I'm just going to look silly. And let's taxi on down here. It's probably take a few minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and just pause the video so you don't have to watch this whole taxi procedure. And then I will be back once we're lined up on the runway. Last minute things before we pull onto the runway. We want to make sure our landing lights are on, which they are. And we want to hop down here, and this is something that's caused me some hassles with this airplane. The aileron and rudder tabs, make sure these are bolted 0. if either one of them is offset, the airplane tries to turn on its own. It just makes it hard to control. So something to keep in mind. Go ahead and set our flaps to 17 degrees there. That's the takeoff flap position. And we are ready to roll. So let's go ahead and pull onto the runway here. And GSX, for whatever reason, is still trying to tell me to set the parking brake. I don't know why. It should have turned itself off, but hey, it's the first video. We're learning as we go, and we'll go through this adventure together. Now, we do know that we're taking off on runway 26 here. The wind's going to be coming off to our left side a little bit, and we're going to have to be circling back around behind us to make it to our first waypoint. That's alright, not too big a deal. We'll get her done. So let's get onto the runway here and let's get rolling. Now we do have our prop pitch controls full forward. We have our mixture control, if you will. It's oh man, I can't think right now. Our fuel levers are not full forward. They're about halfway, and we'll just throttle all the way up. Now, another little weird quirk about this Beach 1900, if you throttle up too fast, the torque and the prop RPMs bounce back and forth, and it makes it look a little weird. So there's our V1 speed. Technically, it's really not. I'll explain that. And as you can see, though, we had our V rotate just right because it barely touched the yoke, and off she goes. Alright, positive rate, bring our gear up. Continue to climb out on this heading for the moment. We don't want to climb too steep. We're at almost 4,000 feet per minute.
Gear up.
Go ahead and just trim that nose down a little bit. Climb at about 2,500 feet per minute at the moment. A little bit of turbulence there. It's from the heat coming off the ground. You can see the airplane keeps trying to sort of turn itself to the left. That's that rudder and aileron trim. We'll go ahead and start a left turn now so that we can get on course. And as our speed comes up a little bit here, we'll go ahead and bring the flaps up. And just bring that nose down a little bit, get that speed up a little more. And bring those flaps up. We already know we're set to GPS. Sorry for the little stutter there. Like I said, it is a mid-range system. The video recording software actually puts a little, takes a little tax on my system there. So you might have a little bit of stutter. I apologize for that. We'll turn our nav, hold on, and let's just pop this guy up real quick. Again, please forgive the stutter. Autopilot engaged, nav is on, and we want to go altitude hold. And now another little quirk here, okay, there's lots of them, aren't there? Another little quirk here is when you hit that altitude hold, it likes to set the altitude you're at. So you got to come back down here. Now I've tried the altitude select, I've tried the climb mode. For whatever reason, it still keeps resetting this thing. So we just jump back over here, and we'll take this up to 17,000 because that's where we're going. A little farther. And we got our nav set, altitude set, autopilot's on, yaw damper needs to come on, and the prop sync needs to come on now. Those are both on. And now we can set our climb rate. Come on now. Set our climb rate. We'll set it to 800 feet per minute. There she starts to climb, and we can bring the power back a little bit because we don't need to be on full power. You don't want to run that too long. You see our prop RPMs are really high. Okay. That's the prop pitch. So the first thing we want to do is we want to bring that torque down a little bit. We do that by pulling the throttles back. It goes down. We just bring it down a little for the moment. And then I want to go ahead and adjust my prop pitch and watch the prop RPM there. You'll see it come down. And the performance tables say that a cruise climb is between 1,400 and 1,500 RPMs. So we're going to bring it down to just below 1,500. Okay, now you can look on this side. This is the first officer side. We're going to take a look at that airspeed real quick, make sure it's not dropping off too fast. If it is, we might need to lower our rate of climb. Okay, and that's pretty much it. We're into the climb now. Okay, if we look at our GPS here, we can can see that we are following our course as expected. I don't know what the little white line on the side is over. Oh, you know what? Because it wants to go back. Watch. It goes TFD and then it comes back to PXR. I bet it does. Yep. See, it comes back. So it actually circles back. And we don't want to do that. So, unfortunately, I don't think we can clear one of these out. Let's try. If not, we're just going to have to suck it up on this flight plan. It won't even let me cycle through these, will it? Cursor on. Yeah, see, that's the one thing about this plane I don't like, is it's just a little quirky. You know what I think we're going to do on this? We're just going to suck it up. It's going to come out here to TFD, which is out here a little bit further, still 22 miles out. And then it's going to come back to PXR unless we do a direct to. But if we do a direct to on this GPS, you're going to, wherever you go, that's it. It erases the rest of the flight plan. It's one of those wacky little things. I'm going to let it fly it this time. You're not going to have to sit here and watch the whole thing. Don't worry about it. Let's go ahead and snap back up to our pilot's view here. Hopefully it's not too choppy now. When we were down around the city there it was. And I know we're looking a little rough there, and I apologize for that. But again, you know, most of us don't have really high-end systems. So if you're watching this and you've got a really high-end system and you're just thinking to yourself, you know, your computer sucks. It sucks. Well, okay, yeah, it does. But you know what? For me, you know, it's fine when I'm flying, but it may be a little rough on the videos, and so for that I apologize. But you don't have to sit here and stare at it. I'm done yakking for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and let this thing go on up to cruise altitude. It's going to be a little bit longer of a flight than anticipated because the way that flight plan went in. I could change that. I could mess around with it. I'm not going to do it. Let's just take this as it is, and let's do our thing here. You know, sometimes that's, you know, things got to be changed on the fly. That's what it's like in the real world as a pilot. I'm not going to change this route. I'm going to take it and just pretend that air traffic control made me go out there first. That's life sometimes. I'm done talking for now, and I will see you back when we get ready to start our descent at our top of descent. I just hopped back on here real quick. I thought you guys might want to see this. We're actually climbing, I'm trying to get up to 19,000. Look at this airplane, is just getting rocked. I mean, you know, it's one thing in the simulator, it makes it a little tough to fly, but I've flown around Phoenix area in really hot weather when the thermals are kicking, and the airplane gets bounced around like this, and man, I'll tell you what, I would not want to be in this airplane right now. Look at this thing. I mean, it's rocking. So I just thought you guys might want to see that real quick, and that way you'll know why you'll know why we're at 19,000 feet instead of 17,000 when we get ready to start our descent. So, see you in a few minutes. Alright, welcome back there, YouTube. Now you can see we're 3 nautical miles from Canby, and this is where we're actually going to start our descent. Let me just tell you, up to this point, it was a rough ride. But the air finally smoothed out. We were able to pick up a little speed and make up a little time. However, because of the rough air, we had to fly a little slower, and we're definitely going to be a little late on this flight, which is a shame for our first flight here with PVA. But we're already at 51 minutes into this flight. We're just going to have to accept the fact we're a little late. You can see we're already here at Canby. We're about to start this descent here just a second, and we're actually making our way to Jasser. We're going to bypass Hoser, and we're going to go straight for Jasser. And the reason is very simple. Jasser is our entry point, if you will. There's no star at Sholo. There's no arrival procedures, but Jasser is where we're going to enter into our final approach for runway 24. The wind is 220 at 11 knots, gusting to 16. So let's go ahead and get ready to start this descent here. Shrink that down, hop back over here, and we're going to need our autopilot to do this. Actually, what we need to do is we need to hop back down here. We were already there, weren't we? I'm silly. Alright, so we're going to go down to 8,000 feet. the elevation for show low is 6,400 feet and change. So we're going to descend down to 8,000 feet, and let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to descend at 1,000 feet per minute. So we can see we're starting to come down, and now we got to watch that speed. It's going to go up really quick. So we want to go ahead and just bring those throttles back. It's a lot easier to speed up than it is to slow down. So go ahead and just roll those throttles back. Let that speed come back down just a little bit, and then just bring it back up gradually. Here now it's coming down just a little, so we'll bring it back up. We were at about 84% N1 on our turbines here. That's this number right here. All right, we were about 84% when our speed started to come down. At 85, it looks like it's still coming down a little, so let's bring it up to 86. There's 87 and change, still going down, so we just want to just nudge it up a little bit. We don't want to lose too much speed. We already had to fly pretty slow on this flight, so go ahead and hop back over here for the moment. Okay, one thing I forgot to do, we need to set our heading. Set it to heading mode, because it's trying to make a turn over to this next waypoint over here, right? And we don't want to do that. We're turning from Hoser. We're turning back to the heading we were on going into Hoser. And we're just going to fly up parallel to Jasser.
We're passing transition altitude, Captain.
And we're passing transition altitude. Our altimeter at show low is 3003. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment right now. There we go. And you can see with our N1 at 88%, about 88.6, it was our speed was starting to climb again a little bit. So we don't want it to climb too much. Obviously, our maximum speed right now is this needle right here. This red and white needle tells us our maximum speed. If we go beyond that, we'll be over speed. We risk damaging the aircraft, and obviously we don't want to do that. And we're not that far really from Jasser, so we may be, yeah, we're probably descending a little bit slow here. If we want, we can hop outside the airplane here, and you should be able to see Sholo's airport off to our left here. There she is over there, just off that left wing. That's one of the runways for Sholo right there. So we're just go a little beyond Jasser. We didn't do any calculations for our top of descent or anything. I pretty much just try to sort of figure it out in my head. I do that once in a while with these smaller airplanes. You know, it's really nice in the larger aircraft. Obviously, you've got you know, full flight management systems, and this one has one as well, which you can use, but you know, in reality it's just a lot easier to fly via this GPS on these short little hops like this. I don't see the point in messing around with it too much, but you know, if we get an opportunity to do a longer flight in this Beech 1900, we'll certainly take advantage of that FMS. We are going to have to go ahead and increase our descent rate a little bit, so we'll just bring it on down to 1,800 feet per minute. And just back those throttles off a little bit more. And let's get this airplane down. And we're just about parallel to Jasser, but we're simply not low enough right now. We know that we need to get down about 8,000 feet. Now, we don't need to be at 8,000 feet at Jasser. We probably need to be closer to 10,000 feet at Jasser. If we look at our flight plan right here, you can see just activate that approach real quick, and you can see on our flight plan here, if I get this thing to work right, I didn't want to go earlier. There we go. If you look on there from Jasser to the runway, total distance is you know, it's a little over 30 miles still. So we're going to go ahead and make that turn here pretty soon, and once I get lined up and headed towards final approach, I'll hop back on here with you. Just about to cross Jasser here. I was incorrect about one thing.
Descending below 10,000 feet.
That's our notification from ACARS. We can hop up here, make sure our landing lights are on real quick. Hop back over here. Now, we're a little bit closer to the runway than I anticipated. The distance that I was looking at was actually to the hold position. Obviously, we're not going to be holding. We're coming in for a landing. So we're going going to still slow our rate of descent here a little bit. And we need to watch our speed pretty closely. As you can see, it's starting to get a little rough here, so it's going to be a rough landing. Hopefully we'll be able to make it smooth. Oh, it went into the hold for some reason, so let's go ahead and just kick the autopilot off. And we're going to do what we're here to do, and that's fly an airplane. So let's go ahead and fly this bad boy for a minute here. What I can do actually is I can put that autopilot back on and I can go to my heading mode, because I did have the heading set with the runway there. So we'll go ahead and just crank it over to the left a little bit and get lined back up. You can just see the runway off in the distance there. And I'm going to change my altitude real quick to 8,500. We don't want to get too close to the ground here. And I'm not flying textbook or anything like that. It's just, we're just, you know, we're flying the airplane here. I usually fly a little more realistic as far as my procedures and stuff go, but right now really what I'm doing is just trying to get this first flight in there, because I know that's what we all want. And once we get down to the runway there, we'll be good to go. So just take a look up here, and as you can see, we're a little high, so it's definitely time to take that autopilot off and start doing our final approach here. So let's turn that off. We're a little high, that's alright, it happens. It's not the end of the world. Bring those throttles back a little more, bring in that first flap setting here. Turn everything off on here except the yaw damper. And when those flaps first come in, she likes to climb. And we're slow enough, believe it or not, for our gear to come down.
Gear down.
Even though we're not in that white line yet, we're slow enough. We got us quite a wind there, so we'll just have to fight our way in. See that crosswind, something else there, isn't it? That's alright though. Now we're definitely descending a little too fast. We're ready to come in full flaps now. Slow that rate of descent a little bit. And she is just all over the place. Just so you know, that's not poor piloting skills on my part. This plane is getting rocked. So I'm just doing everything I can. That's all thermals and turbulence kicking this thing around, so I'm just gonna keep working her down there. 500. There's our call out for 500 feet. And we're just trying to get lined back up with the runway here. We don't want to land her too hard, that's for sure. 400. Oh, she is bumpy, huh? Alright, slow that rate of descent a little bit. Don't come in too hard. And let's land the sucker.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Oh. That was a little rough, huh? There we go. Whew, that was one of my worst landings ever. Look at that crosswind is so strong that it's just trying to yank the airplane to the left over there. Oh, and we're all over the place. This has got to be one of my worst landings ever. Whew. I promise you, I can usually fly an airplane better than that. Oh, that was terrible, folks. I'll tell you what. Be embarrassed for me. You can look at the flag right there. I mean, that is a straight crosswind. That was something else there coming in. That was a rough landing too. Minus 200 and I don't know if you saw it. 229 feet per minute there. That was rough. Bring those flaps up. Let's take a quick look. Where do we need to go here? We're going to need to exit to the left and then taxi back, it looks like. Well, I got to tell you, I am mildly embarrassed by that landing right there. That was something else. I can't recall the last time I had a landing quite so bumpy there. But that's how it goes sometimes. I mean, that was some rough weather there. You saw it, you know, the plane just was dropping out, and then so I pulled too hard on the yoke, then she tried to climb. It just didn't want to come down. So sometimes you just have a rough go of it, and that was definitely one of those times. So, But you know, that's part of the learning experience. We know that next time we're flying in, we probably should hold just a little bit more speed when it's bumpy like that. And by holding a little more speed, we get a little more control of the aircraft. There's not much you can do about that in this little airplane. I mean, this is a small plane. And when you're flying something like this in really bumpy weather like that, I'm here to tell you, folks, it is not easy to land it smooth. Like I said, I've flown real airplanes. I have a pilot's license, and I fly those little Cessnas. They get rocked around harder than this thing in that hot thermal weather. And let me tell you, minus 200 feet per minute is a pretty smooth landing under such circumstances, that's for sure. Alright, so I'm going to taxi back up here. I'm going to find a parking space, and I'm going to shut down the aircraft, and I will come back to you with a look at our ACARS, and we'll see what ACARS has going on, so that you know what you have to do at the end of the flight to make sure everything's good to go. So I'll see you here in just a second. Alright, we're getting ready to finish up here, YouTube. This was the first flight in what will hopefully be a really long series on the life of a virtual airline pilot. We just ran back here, that little thing I do, my wife says that's the most annoying thing in the world. If you agree, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to avoid doing it. Here we are on our pilot profile page under Pilot Tools and Pilot Center. This is us, Captain Mac, PVA 3588. You can see that our location is now KSOW, Sholo, Arizona. As I told you before, once you get that first flight in, wherever you landed at, that's where you want your next flight to start from. You can see we've flown one airline, that was Great Lakes Airlines, one flight, that makes sense. But look at this is the key right here, only 19 hours to go. Seems like a lot, but it's going to go away pretty quick. We can scroll down here, and if we look at our last 10 flights, we can click on the flight number here, and this is going to pull up the PIREP. This is that pilot report we were talking about. And we can just take a look at the information here: departure, arrival, who flew it, number of passengers, how long it took, all that good stuff. We look down here, we can see that our total revenue was $264.13. So that was a profit margin of 35.78%. That's not too bad, not for our first flight anyway. I wish we could delete this number, but we can't. That was a really rough landing, minus 222.92 feet per second. Or per minute, I'm sorry, per minute per second. That'd be a really rough landing. Our landing pitch, the runway we landed on, all that good stuff. And this, the flight critic, this would be those warnings we talked about in ACARS, overspeed, stalls, and so on. You're not allowed to do refueling midair. So if you don't take enough fuel for the flight, hit too much headwind, something like that, you're going to have to redo the flight, because if you refuel in midair, your PIREP will be rejected. More information about the flight, passenger, we can click on these and look at who flew, what they bought, what they paid. Good stuff if you're interested in it. This was our route. You remember we had to fly out to TFD first. That was an error in the route. We just flew it as though ATC had ordered us out there first. It is what it is. Probably cost us a little time. Part of the reason we were late. And that's it. That's all the information. Real quick, we'll just jump over here, and I want to show you something. This is something we're going to rely on in future videos here. This is the airframe substitution chart. We flew a Beech 1900 today. That was the aircraft called for in the flight. We could have flown, BEC is just light Beechcraft, or Beechcraft light air, or something like that. Anyway, we have a really great Flight 1 King Air 200 that we're going to fly a little later on with one of our Ameriflight routes. And that'll be a BEC. That's what that is. But we look down here, we see all of these PFO, PFO, PFO. That's probationary first officer. That's us. These are the airframes that we can fly. We've got PMDG's Jetstream. If I can find a good flight for a J41, we'll probably do one of those. But once we get past that 20 hours, we go up here to the FO, or first officer. Then we can fly Boeing 717. We'll probably fly a lot of CRJs here. And the way this works is, if the flight calls for a CRJ 200 and we don't have a good one that we want to fly, but we got a good CRJ 700, we can fly the CRJ 700 because we can substitute any one of these aircraft for any one of the others. When we look down here, we'll see as we go up through the ranks, there's one place where you cannot make any substitutions, and that's the Airbus series. 318, 19, 20, and 21 must be flown by 318, 19, 20, or 21. Talked to the founders of this airline about that a couple times. A few folks have brought it up. That's the way they want it. They have their reasons, but throughout the rest of this, you can see there's the Embraer regional jets. You can substitute the regional jets in there, and we'll fly some of those eventually. If you've got an MD-82 flight, you can fly the 88, and so on. So that's it for this first episode of The Life of a Virtual Airline Pilot. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a good time making it. It was a little rough. First try at this, so bear with me. We'll smooth it out as we go along. As always, I'm sure you know, a thumbs up or a like down below is greatly appreciated. It helps me out. And any comments that you have, please feel free to put them down there. Just be nice. Be gentle with me. I'm a gentle soul. Don't put anything rude or nasty. I'm not interested in having arguments on the YouTube comments section. I don't see a lot of point in that. But if you have requests, something you'd like to see, or maybe you have some information that I wasn't aware of having to do with the Coronado Beach 1900 or Real Beach 1900, feel free to put that information down in the comments, and you can always follow the channel as well, or subscribe to the channel, I think is what they call it. And that's it for today. I'm Captain Mac. This has been a great load of fun, and I look forward to seeing you on the next flight.